I lived in the United States for 32 years. I served 9 of them in the United States Army. I earned a Purple Heart in the desert of Kuwait, and they deported me over a broken taillight. Let me tell you what it's like when the country you bled for decides you never belonged. But let me start at the beginning. Ciudad Mier, Tamaulipas. 3,400 people, 1 church, 2 cantinas, and no work. My father, Aurelio Treviño, died 2 years before I left. Silicosis. His lungs destroyed from years in a quarry without a mask. He walked his whole life breaking rock, and the rock broke him back. My mother, Esperanza, washed other people's clothes for 8 pesos a kilo. I was the oldest of 4, Cirilo, Marisol, Benjamin. Someone had to go. September 1987. I was 26 years old. The night before I left, my mother woke up at 4 in the morning. No electricity that night. Lamplight, the kind that makes shadows jump on adobe walls. She didn't say anything. She just stood at the stove and wrapped 3 bean tortillas in aluminum foil. Slow, deliberate, like she was trying to make the moment last longer than it could. I watched her back. She never turned around. I picked up the tortillas. They were still warm. I said, voy a mandar pa la casa cada quincena, ma. No me voy a olvidar. I'm going to send money home every 2 weeks. I won't forget. She turned to wash a glass that was already clean. I understood. If she looked at me, she would cry. And she had never cried in front of us, not once, not even when my father died. So I walked out. And the last thing I heard from that house was the sound of that glass hitting the bottom of the sink. I crossed the Rio Bravo alone. No coyote. My cousin Ernesto, who was already on the other side, sent instructions by letter. A truck tire inner tube, a rope, the right point on the river near Roma, Texas. Less patrolled, he said. What he didn't say was that it had rained for 3 days before I arrived, and the river was swollen and angry. The chamber flipped. The current took me. For 40 seconds, I counted them later, obsessively, hundreds of times. I was underwater, tangled in the rope, dragged 200 meters downstream. I didn't know which side was Mexico and which was the United States. I didn't know if I was going to die in my country or someone else's. I made it to the American bank, 1 shoe gone, face in the mud. I lay there for 5 minutes, unable to stand. First thought when I could breathe again, Ama, llegué. Mom, I made it. I worked for about a year before everything changed. Lawn maintenance in Eagle Pass, then a meat packing line at Maverick Beef Processors, 5 in the morning, saw in hand, $4.10 an hour. Then construction in San Antonio. You know how it is when you're just trying to survive. You don't think about the future. You think about next Friday. Then, one Saturday night at a bar in San Antonio, a man in uniform sat down next to me. Sergeant Darnell Price, U.S. Army recruiter. He was doing what he did, looking for people in immigrant communities, people who needed something and had something to offer. He bought me a beer and said something I've thought about almost every day since. He said, "You serve 2 years, you get your papers. Simple as that." I asked him 3 times if it was true. He said yes, all 3 times. Trey, he told me. He already had the nickname ready, couldn't pronounce Treviño. The army doesn't forget its own. I believed him. I needed to believe him. In July of 1988, I raised my right hand and swore an oath to the United States of America. And I meant every word. Fort Bliss, El Paso, basic training. I don't know how to explain this. I took to it. The discipline, the structure, the language, the weapons. I was the best shot in my unit. My instructor called me a natural. I learned English in 90 days of total immersion. The accent stayed, the vocabulary didn't. Within months, I was thinking in 2 languages at once, dreaming in both. And then, Kuwait. August 1990, Desert Storm. I was 30 years old, deployed to a desert that made Tamaulipas feel like a garden. The heat was different there. It had weight. You breathed it like it was trying to fill your lungs with sand. February 27, 1991. The advance toward Kuwait City. A mortar round hit 15 feet to my left. The shrapnel caught me in the shoulder. Entry wound, no exit. Surgery in the field. Evacuation to a hospital in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. I was conscious the whole time. I remember thinking about my mother's tortillas. I don't know why. The brain does strange things when it's deciding if you're going to die. In May of 1991, at Fort Bliss, they pinned a Purple Heart on my chest. I became an instructor. 11B Infantry, Combat Tactics and Marksmanship, Fort Bliss, 1992 to 1997. I trained 340 soldiers, boys of 19 and 20 years old, American kids who'd never held a rifle, who'd never been afraid of something they couldn't name. I taught them how to survive. The first day I stood in front of a class, a recruit whispered to his buddy, thinking I couldn't hear, "Is our instructor even from here?" I picked up an M16 from the bench, made the adjustments in 11 seconds, fired 5 shots at the target 300 meters out, all 5 in the center ring. I turned around and said, "From Fort Bliss, same as you, take position." Nobody asked again. In 1993, at a quinceañera party I went to with my buddy Bobby Reyes, I met Sandra Leticia Dominguez. Born in El Paso, American, daughter of Mexicans. She told me later the uniform scared her. I told her it was just clothes. We got married on June 12, 1994, at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church on Mesa Street. I left the Army in 1997, honorably discharged, Staff Sergeant, 9 years of service, 2 wars, 1 Purple Heart, and I waited for my citizenship papers. They never came. Here's what actually happened, what I didn't find out until 20 years later. Fort Bliss had processed my naturalization request incorrectly. Some clerical error in 1997-1998. The paperwork sat in a queue. By the time someone identified the mistake in 1999, I had moved, changed address twice. The correspondence came back undelivered. My conditional green card expired in October of 2001. The Social Security number from the Army kept working. The system never crossed the 2 records. For 18 years, I lived in the United States as a veteran, a taxpayer, a father, a husband, a mechanic, and technically, without knowing it, without status. Technically, a man who did not belong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After leaving the army, I went to work at Martinez & Sons Mechanical Services, 4780 Dyer Street, El Paso. Don Hector Martinez ran the place. Second-generation Mexican-American, 72 years old when they took me. A man who fixed things and hired men who could fix things and didn't ask questions beyond that. I worked there for 21 years. Diesel engines, heavy trucks, municipal fleets. Things with 800 horsepower that would eat you alive if you didn't know what you were doing. In 2007, the city of El Paso sent us 14 garbage trucks with transmission problems. Nobody else could figure it out. I spent 4 weekends straight in that garage, alone with those machines. Fixed every one. Don Hector had the city's thank you letter framed and hung in reception. My name is on that letter. $12 an hour in 1998. $24.50 by 2019. $3,920 a month. Out of that, I sent $350 home every month for 22 years. First to my mother, then to my brother Benjamin, then to my niece Rocio for college. Over 32 years, I sent $114,000 to Mexico. Every Monday morning, before work, Western Union at the CVS on Montana Avenue. I paid $94,200 in federal and state taxes. I never used Medicaid, never took food stamps, never asked for anything. We lived at 2214 Elm Street, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a backyard where I built a brick barbecue with my own hands. My boys grew up in that house. Daniel, born in 1995. Marco, 1998. Emilio, 2001. 3 American citizens. 3 boys who grew up eating carne asada on Sundays and doing homework at a kitchen table that Sandra covered with a plastic cloth from the mercado. The best night of my life was Christmas of 2003. I had the fire going in the backyard, Modelo in hand, apron from the Dollar Tree. Sandra with Emilio, 2 years old, in her arms. Daniel 8, Marco 5, running around the yard. And then, rare in El Paso, it started to snow. Lightly, just barely. And those boys ran out into the yard at midnight, arms out, mouths open, trying to catch snowflakes. I stood in the doorway and watched them. I thought about my father's destroyed lungs, about my mother washing glasses that were already clean at 4 in the morning, about 40 seconds underwater in the Rio Bravo with no shoes, about the desert in Kuwait and a piece of metal in my shoulder. I thought all of that was to get here, to this doorway, to these 3 boys in the snow. I didn't say it out loud. Some things you keep. Sandra and I separated in 2012. Not loudly, slowly. The PTSD I never treated, the nightmares she woke up hearing, the weeks of silence I didn't know how to break. She asked for the separation. I didn't fight it. She is still in El Paso, still raising Emilio, remarried in 2016 to a good man. She sends me a message every year on my birthday. I always write back, Gracias, Sandra. Cuídate. The years between 2012 and 2019, I don't know how to explain this. I worked. I sent money. I went to church on Sundays at Our Lady of Guadalupe. Helped fix the roof when it needed fixing. I had Friday enchiladas and modelo at Julio's Cantina with Bobby Reyes every week at 4 o'clock. I lived, quietly, working, watching my boys grow from a distance that I told myself was just geography. What I didn't know was that my green card had been expired for 18 years. November 14th, 2019, 7:22 in the morning. I was driving my F-150 to work, coffee in the cup holder, corrido on the radio. I was thinking about a city fleet truck that needed the transmission looked at. Ordinary morning. The kind of morning you don't remember because there's no reason to. A police cruiser lit up behind me, taillight out. I pulled over calmly. Army training, you learn to move without agitation. Hands visible, nothing sudden. I handed over my documents. The officer took them back to his car. He was gone a long time. Bobby Reyes drove past on the other side of the street and beeped. We did that every morning. Bobby stopped when he saw the situation. Don Hector arrived 2 minutes later because Bobby had already called him. And then I saw the ICE vehicle turn the corner. Before any words were spoken, I understood. Can you understand that? 32 years of trying to stay invisible, and in that moment, I understood before a single word came out of anyone's mouth. The ICE agent was young, less than 30. He said, Mr. Treviño, your green card expired in 2001. You've been out of status for 18 years. You need to come with us. I was quiet for 12 seconds. Bobby counted them. Then I said, I was in the army. I have a Purple Heart. The agent said, Sir, that doesn't change your immigration status. Do you know what it's like to have your whole life summarized in one sentence? 32 years, 2 wars, 3 American sons, a name on a memorial plaque at Fort Bliss, and none of it changes your immigration status. I looked at my hands before they put the cuffs on. The fingers that got crushed in 2011 by a hydraulic press, that I never properly set because I was afraid to show up in the system. The palms with the calluses from rifle stocks and torque wrenches. I thought, 18 years and a broken taillight. Don Hector stood on the sidewalk as they put me in the vehicle. He took off his cap and held it against his chest, like at a funeral, like you do when something passes that deserves respect. The coffee in the cup holder was still warm when they drove away. Otero County Processing Center, Chaparral, New Mexico. 47 days. Cell with 14 men. 1 phone call per day at 21 cents a minute. Metal bunk. Cold chicken on Tuesdays. I met a Honduran man named Mauricio who'd been in the United States for 24 years, deported for a DUI from 2014, he thought was resolved. I met a 19-year-old from Oaxaca who cried every night. Daniel flew in from Kentucky the second week, in uniform, Captain, 101st Airborne Division. My son, wearing the uniform of the country that was processing my deportation. We sat on opposite sides of a glass panel with a yellow plastic telephone between us. He cried. I didn't. I said, no llores con el uniforme puesto. Don't cry in the uniform. He said it wasn't fair. I said, lo sé. What else is there to say? He knew. I knew. The glass knew. An immigration attorney named Craig Hoffman took the case pro bono. Veterans Networks, someone who knew someone. He argued the Fort Bliss processing error, the military service, the Purple Heart. The judge acknowledged the error, said he didn't have jurisdiction to reverse the decision. Case sent to appeal. That appeal is still active. In 2026, 7 years later. March 7th, 2020, the day I left. I won't describe everything. Some of it I can't. Daniel had come back. Marco arrived 40 minutes late. He'd been stuck in traffic, and we had 11 minutes in the airport before the forced boarding. He cried in the parking lot afterward. Emilio filmed the whole thing with a shaking hand. He filmed the floor, my boots, the space between us. He has the video still. It's in a folder on his phone labeled Don't Open. I gave Daniel my dog tags through the gap in the visitor glass. He still wears them, on top of his own. To Marco I said, ya tienes tu empresa. Eso es mío también. You have your company now. That's mine too. To Emilio I said, termina la carrera. Finish your degree. He said he would. The plane had 22 deportees. Nobody talked. 58 minutes in the air. When we flew over the Rio Grande, I looked down through the small window and saw that brown line of water. The same river, the same water, or well, the same river, you know what I mean. The one I crossed in a truck tire with a rope 32 years before. In 1987, 40 seconds in that water almost killed me. The plane crossed it in less than one. I closed my eyes, didn't open them until the wheels hit the asphalt in Reynosa. I've been here 7 years now. Colonia Rodolfo Garza, on the west side of Reynosa. A rented room in Doña Lucia's house. $70 a month. Single bed, wall fan, a small table with photos of my sons taped to the wall, and a Purple Heart in its original box. That's what I came back with after 32 years. A box and some photos. I do informal mechanical work when I can find it. Between what I earn and what Daniel and Marco send, and they send, every month, silently, without making it a thing, I get about $640. That's less than I made in a day and a half at the shop on Dyer Street. I wake up at 5:50 every morning. The body doesn't know how to sleep past the sun. Habit from the army, habit from the shop, habit from a life that no longer exists in the form I knew it. Do you know what it's like to wake up every day in a country that isn't yours anymore? Where your own accent sounds foreign, where people call you el americano without meaning any harm, just because that's what you are now. Something in between, something from a place that doesn't exist. I don't know how to explain what it's like to eat lunch alone while in El Paso. Right now, at this moment, there's a truck in some city fleet with a problem nobody can figure out. And I know I could fix it in 2 hours, and I can't go. Every Sunday at 7 in the evening, 7 o'clock Kentucky time, Daniel calls. He hasn't missed it in 7 years except for 2 field exercises and 1 time when I had pneumonia. That night, he called Emilio at 11 p.m. in a panic. Daniel's boys, Liam is 4, Noah is 2, They've learned to say abuelito. Daniel taught them. I have the audio of Liam saying it for the first time saved on my phone. I've listened to it more times than I can count. I've never held them, not once. In 2021, Daniel visited Fort Bliss for something related to his unit. He walked through the corridor in Building G and took a photo of the plaque on the wall. Instructors who served, names engraved in metal. And there it is, Treviño, R.A. He sent me the photo without comment. I looked at it for a long time. Then I typed back, al menos el nombre quedó. At least the name stayed. That's when I understood what Sergeant Price meant back in 1988 in that bar in San Antonio when he said, "Trey, the Army doesn't forget its own." He was right. The Army didn't forget. My name is on that wall. My record is in that archive. My son wears my dog tags over his uniform. The Army remembered the soldier. It forgot the man. It remembered what I could do for it. It forgot what it owed me. And that difference, that space between what the soldier was worth and what the man was worth, that's where 32 years went. I am Rosendo Aurelio Treviño Garza. I am 64 years old. I am from Ciudad Mier, Tamaulipas. I lived in the United States for 32 years. I served 9 of them in the uniform of that country. I paid $94,000 in taxes. I raised 3 American citizens. I never asked for anything I hadn't earned. My case is still in appeal. Craig Hoffman says there's 15% chance of reversal. Last year, a senator from Texas mentioned it in a hearing about deported veterans. 15%. That's more than zero. If this story is one that deserves to be heard, share it. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine. Stories that don't make the news, but belong to real people who built real lives. And tell me, if a man bleeds for a country, earns a Purple Heart, pays taxes for 30 years, and raises 3 American citizens, what else does he have to do to belong? Leave a comment. I read everyone.